Here's a look at the box score of what was an exhausting but also an exciting football game. If you take a look at the score, 38-33, we're going to get you some instant reaction of this game as we welcome you into our studios. Haley Sutton alongside Danny Kanell and Leger Douzable. What did we just watch? I mean, this was so crazy because it started out with a Kansas 14-0 lead at one point. They have that lightning delay. Everything comes back and it's in array, and it ends with a Kansas upset, Danny.
Wild. The Big 12 has always delivered kind of wild shootout type of games. It was wacky. This one's going to sting a long time for Oklahoma Sooners fans. They had an opportunity. They were sitting in the driver's seat, you know, to potentially make a run to the playoff, and they still can. But this was a rough loss. Dylan Gabriel, I think he might, he was a favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Definitely significantly, it hurts his chances to win it with a performance that wasn't great. Had an opportunity there at the end, but it was just too much to overcome. And Lance Leipold cannot say enough about the job that he's done at Kansas. When he took over this program, it was maybe the worst program in Power 5 and maybe all of college football. He took over it late after a spring football, and he has turned this thing around now where they have one of the biggest wins in program history. Testament to him and those players on that roster. What a huge win for Kansas as a program.
I mean, Haley and DK, if you guys like drama, this game was full of it. You talked about, I mean, Jason Bean, he struggled in this game. There were times like he seems like he was throwing it to the other team. He has an interception when they're up on a screenplay. He throws it right to the defensive end. Oklahoma goes in and scores. They take the lead. Then on that next possession, he almost throws another interception. But when they needed him the most, DK, on 4th and 6, finding Arnold for that 37-yard pass, young fella, stay in bounds, go down, don't go out of bounds. Situational football is another thing that really plagued both of these teams in this situation. Neal at the end, who runs in for the touchdown, you have to understand, they wanted you to run in. That way the offense could have time. You talked about it. Dylan Gabriel had another Heisman potential moment like he had versus Texas, wasn't able to get it done.
Dylan Gabriel, like you mentioned, Danny, not his best game. 14 of 19, 170 yards, no touchdowns, but he did throw an interception. So it's interesting when you look at the quarterback conversation. But for OU, guys, the rest of the schedule coming up this year, we've been talking about college football playoff implications. Kind of feels like that might be out the window now when you look at this loss. But taking a look at the rest of the schedule, they've got Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU, TCU. Gentlemen, thoughts on just the upcoming schedule after this tough loss to Kansas?
They better get it ready and ready to go for a trip to Stillwater for the last version of Bedlam we could see for quite a while. One of the best rivalries in the sport. Mike Gundy has made no secret that he wasn't thrilled that Oklahoma left the Big 12 in the quiet of the night and left, and was a big reason why we've seen this big, massive upheaval in college football. So they would love nothing more to send Oklahoma back into the SEC with a loss there. They come limping into this game now, literally and figuratively, as they had some dings. Stutzman was hurt in this game. So that's going to add some intrigue for sure. But I do think, like, if you're a Sooner fan, I know you're upset about this one. If you handle your business, if you go through this stretch and you do win and you play Texas again, you beat them twice, you are very much in the conversation for the playoff. It looks bleak now, but this is college football. We're going to see more teams get upset, just like the Sooners lost today, but you have to make sure you handle your business. That's what's concerning for me. Offense didn't look great. Dylan Gabriel struggled. Defense couldn't get stops when they needed them. It didn't, to me, look like a playoff team. So you can handle your business, but you have to play better, too.
Yeah, Danny, a little surprised after the scare they had last week versus UCF. A lot of people thought they may have overlooked the UCF, and they were getting ready for this game. Boy, it didn't look like it coming out of the gate. Haley, you talked about it. 14-0 to start that game. Dylan Gabriel stares his receiver down on a comeback route, gets picked off. What Oklahoma cannot do, DK, is they cannot let Kansas beat them 2 weeks in a row. You talked about it. It's a tough loss versus a really good Kansas team. That's like, you talked about what Coach Leopold has done in Kansas has not been talked about enough. Like, this was known as a basketball school. Right now, it is a football school. So if you're Oklahoma, that game, like you talked about in Stillwater, could be the last time we see it for a number of years. Mike Gundy will have that team ready. That's going to be a big bounce-back game for Oklahoma. They cannot allow this loss versus Kansas to go over into next week versus Oklahoma State.
Don't forget, too, Lance Leipold, what he's dealt with this year. Jalen Daniels, preseason was predicted, he was picked by the media to be Big 12 Player of the Year, and he's been out most of the season. So he's been playing Jason Bean, who was the true backup for most of the season. So you've been overcoming adversity from day one when you walked in there. Tremendous team effort and a great job from Coach Leipold.
So, Lise, you touched on it with this Oklahoma team. They get that big win over Texas, and then they struggle after the bye week to UCF, and then they lose this one. So it kind of felt like this one was coming. But looking ahead, the first college football playoff poll comes out next week. So if you're the committee, Lige, where do you put this Oklahoma team, and how much does this loss really affect that?
Yeah, Haley, the wrong time to lose the game, right, before the polls come out. So if you look at this in totality, right, me and Danny were saying this isn't a huge upset. I believe the line was only 8.5. I think most of us on the panel picked Kansas to cover in the points, and we weren't surprised if they were to win. We saw Jason Bean coming off his best game versus Oklahoma State, where he threw for over 400 yards, and he did just enough to upset Oklahoma today. So I wouldn't knock them down too far. I would say they probably get knocked down to maybe 11 in the poll.
Yeah, I mean, there's a group of one-loss teams that I very much would put Oklahoma in this category. You got Penn State, who just lost. Oregon State's a one-loss team, but they got a tricky game tonight.
Ooh, Arizona.
You know? Ole Miss is in that group. Utah looks like they might have a second loss on the season. Mizzou. So there's a group of teams that are going to be stacked up, and you look at the resumes, you really dig in. We'll have to see, because Oklahoma really only has that Texas game, but it's a big win.
Yep. Other
than that, they didn't look great last week against UCF. So I think they might be, around there, 11, 12, somewhere around there.
All right, well, a surprising finish here. Kansas upsetting Oklahoma. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insight. We want to give you one final look at that box score. A crazy game happening in Lawrence, Kansas, but the Jayhawks walking away victorious, a 38-33 victory.